Before I start, I want to start with I'd like to begin with a little story. So back in the year 2000, when you were all just little children, but I was an adult, um, I was living in Sydney, Australia, so at the time. And in Sydney, the Olympics were held in the year 2000 there. So I was in the Olympic City, living there. And one of the things they decided to do was they decided to take no chances because Atlanta was a bit of a dodgy Olympics before then. They were taking no chances whatsoever. So they decided they'd have a rehearsal for the marathon. So about a month before the actual real Olympic marathon, they organized a marathon. And they did it exactly like the Olympic marathon. And they invited local runners to come and run. So I went to run the Olympic marathon in 2000. And I was able to take part in the event. It was an exact copy. Had all the crowds out cheering, the blue line. They towed all the cars off the route. You ran all the way through all the iconic Harbour Bridge, Opera House, all those things, to the brand new Olympic Stadium, which they'd opened, and they'd let the people into the stadium. And we ran in through the tunnel. It was all dark, and you came out and the crowd were roaring, and the guy who had you on the big jumbotron and was calling your name, and you ran around the Olympic track. And I thought to myself when I did that, my goodness, what must it be like to be a professional runner? Every little piece of nerve endings was just firing off. And I thought, this is just a tiny little insight into being a pro runner. And now 20 years later, somebody, being Matt Fitzgerald, has written a book to give you insight in what it's really like to go and be a pro runner. So we're going to get answers to some of those questions. I think what it's really going to be like. Hello, my fellow running brothers and sisters. This is Running Book Reviews with Alan and Liz, a place where you can get a detailed review of a running book before deciding whether you want to buy it for yourself. Maybe you would like to get some running tips. Maybe you're just looking for a bit of extra motivation or inspiration to power your training along. Well, today's book will definitely give you some of that. It's Running the Dream by Matt Fitzgerald, and today Matt has graciously agreed to join us and share his experiences that we see in the book.
So first things first, if you don't know Matt Fitzgerald, which that is probably not very many people if you're reading any books about running at all. Matt is a lifelong endurance athlete. He's been running since the age of 11 when he would run with his dad for the last kilometer of the Boston Marathon. He later branched out to triathlon. He completed one Ironman, which hats off, because I wanted to do a half Ironman after I graduated from university, and it still has not happened. So I can't even imagine the full Ironman. He's now a sub 240 marathoner, which is amazing, and which is a little bit what the book is about. So spoiler alert. And then other than that, he's also in the sports world as a running and triathlon coach. He's a certified sports nutritionist. He wrote for many journals and websites. So some of the more well-known ones are like Men's Health or Men's Fitness, Outside Magazine. There's a website, mattfitzgerald.org, which also has a link to another website, which is Matt's training website, which is 80/20 Endurance. And just to top it all off, Matt even has an app in the App Store about where you can calculate your diet quality score, which that's a different book, but he talks about that in the endurance diet, racing weight, and he's authored and co-authored 27 books, which would be in itself probably 1 year worth of running book reviews, podcast episodes. So
in fact, we could have a sub program that's just, instead of running book reviews, it's just Matt Fitzgerald's running book reviews.
We could totally have that. So welcome. We're really happy to have you, and welcome to our podcast.
I'm happy to be with you. You know, I need to update that bio. I've actually done a second Ironman. So
Oh wow, really? Yeah,
yeah,
you
last year.
definitely need to update that, because like an Ironman, I can't even wrap my head around that distance. I mean, I know what it's like to finish a marathon, and I know what it's like to ride. Did a 100K ride once, and I just cannot imagine doing another 80K, not to mention having to run a marathon after, and having swum a 4K, which takes me a long time to swim 4K. So
I never would have thought to do it if others hadn't done it already. I mean, it is pretty extreme.
yeah, I bet that was a full-time job just training for that. But
Much.
yeah.
So Matt, the book Running the Dream, basically for people who don't know, it's the idea is for you to go and train as a professional runner for a 3-month program to train up to run the Chicago Marathon. How did you come up with the idea of doing that?
You know, I think millions, literally millions of runners have come up with the same idea. And, you know, because running is a passion. So, I mean, there are 2 axes. There's your talent on one axis, and there's your passion for running on another. And obviously, you have to have both passion and talent to become a real professional runner. But a lot of people who have a great passion for running, but not enough talent to get a shoe contract, they still would, I mean, they would turn pro if they could, if they had the talent, or at least they, you know, they can't help but fantasize about it, or at least in some way fantasize about finding out just how good they could be if they could really fully invest in running. Maybe just like, you know, take a sabbatical from work, take a little time out from some of their family duties, whatever it takes. Get, you know, expert coaching, all the support you need to just see what you can do with whatever amount of talent you have. So like so many other runners, it's something that I wanted to do. As Liz mentioned, I started running when I was 11. You know, I'm 49 now. I was 46 when I did this experiment. And I figured it's now or never at that age, like, you know.
Yeah, I have to say that this is like, I've thought of that. I've actually inquired at work, like how, you know, what kind of reasons can for what kind of reasons can you have a sabbatical? Apparently running is not one of those reasons. So that I have to, you know, scratch that off.
A training year with Northern Arizona Elite is not written into your sabbatical contract?
It's not. No, it's got to be like, you know, a family emergency. You're taking care of your sick elderly parents, that kind of thing. But yeah, no, they don't. Sports pursuits are not included.
Okay, so everyone has the ambition. Yeah, we're all just sharing it, just hearing you talk about it, but nobody gets to do it. You actually got to do it. How did you persuade such an elite organization of pro runners to take Matt Fitzgerald?
But not just that. How, like, why them? Why that group out of all the others?
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, I took a little bit of my inspiration for this from the book Paper Lion by George Plimpton, which came out way back in the 60s. And that George Plimpton was a writer, sports fan, sports writer who he did this with a variety of sports, actually. And he wasn't an athlete really of any description. He was just a sports fan, but he talked the Detroit Lions American football team into letting him participate in one of their summer training camps. I think this is going back to 1962. And he wrote just a wonderful story about the experience. And then it actually became a film. He got to star as himself in the film. Like, if only
That's awesome.
for me, if I could.
So this is the next
Right.
The next thing is, well, you know, do you think anybody might pick up the film rights?
Yeah, we'll see. You know, it's not easy to get a movie made, but
Okay.
But
Back to Nazalite.
Right. So, I mean, I mentioned that to say, even back then, we're talking more than 50 years ago, or close to, and it took George Plimpton 2 years to convince one professional football team to let him participate in a summer training camp. It took
Wow.
me one email to do the same in running, in
Wow.
2014. Because it's just a different sport, and that if you want proof of it, there you have it. Now, it's true that I'm well connected in the sport, and Ben Rosario, the creator and coach of Northern Arizona Elite, the team I chose, we'd never met, but he knew who I was. I knew who he was. So when I emailed him with this scheme, it wasn't a complete cold call, and I chose, because there are a variety of professional running teams scattered throughout the U.S. I chose that particular team because they have a reputation for being very open and wanting to connect with the broader running community. They just do a ton of sharing on social media and even in person at events. And they view that as part of the job, really. And so I thought, if anyone's going to say yes, Ben, it's going to be Ben, and he did.
Yeah.
Is that openness a reflection of Ben and his leadership of the team, or is it a feature of Hooker and their requirements of a team?
It's Ben, because Ben started the team even before he had a shoe sponsor, and so he just had Ben. I mean, he's a running geek. He loves running. He's immersed in the sport. He knows the sport, but he's also he had a successful. He was briefly himself a professional runner, but after that, he started running specialty shop in his native St. Louis, Missouri, and that became quite successful. So Ben has some business acumen as well, including some marketing savvy. So he brought that whole skill set to bear when he wanted to create a team. He didn't want to just coach runners well. He wanted to, in a sense, change the definition of what it meant to be a professional runner. And he wanted to expand the role to encompass connecting with and inspiring the broader running community.
So then when you, when you were invited and you went down there for the first time, so were you kind of, since, he is the leader of the group, but did the group sort of accept you with open arms, like, I guess, kind of like he would like, or was it a little different?
Yeah, he it's part of just Bren's whole makeup and his way of operating that he recruits very carefully. So he described himself to me at one point while I was there as a culture builder. So that's the whole reason, it's a big part of the reason he wants to coach a team versus a collection of athletes, scattered in all parts, because he believes that, that in the power and value of team dynamics. So, he recruits a certain kind of runner. And, I might have chosen another group where I wouldn't have been welcomed with open arms, but in this group I was. Of course, things were a little stilted early on. I mean, how could they not be?
Yeah, people would be looking and thinking, who is this upstart?
No, I doubt it. I think they probably were like, oh my gosh, it's Matt Fitzgerald. Why is he here running with us?
The funny thing is, this might be a bit of an aside, these folks were not Matt Fitzgerald fans. And actually, very few elite runners are, or elite endurance athletes, because they're not reading books. Like they get their guidance from elite level coaches, scientists, like specialists. They're not the folks reading my books. Like
They're writing the books, not actually,
right.
but they're
Yeah,
making the
post-retirement. Yeah.
content for the books.
Yeah. So nobody was starstruck, that's for sure. But they were welcoming. But there was, I was much older, I was much slower, and I was just an outsider, and I wasn't joining the group on a permanent basis. And that's part of the reason I wanted, partly for training purposes, and then also partly for, social, I guess, purposes. I wanted to spend a lot of time with them because I knew it would take some time to just, I didn't want to force the process. One of my goals going in was I knew I would connect with some individual members of the team more quickly or readily than others, but I wanted to be there long enough to forge some kind of connection with each and every person on the team. And I knew that would take time, and it did. That's exactly when you read the book, you see that.
Yeah.
I mentioned them all right up front, but some people you don't really see much of them until much later, because they were the ones who maybe were a little more skeptical about me, or just took a little longer to warm up to me, or whatever it was.
So was that one of the reasons that you decided, to rent a room in Matt's house instead of, let's say, getting your own place somewhere separate from everybody else?
Well,
Like,
yes, yeah, but that offer came unexpectedly,
oh, okay.
because I mean, initially, all I was looking for was a yes from Ben Rosario. Everything was contingent on that. And even that was a dream come true, just to have the opportunity to go out there and spend 13 weeks, living and training with his team. But I mean, the way I envisioned it was, my wife, Nataki, and I will, rent one of these, extended stay hotel rooms in Flagstaff, and just, see the team when the whole team congregates. Because it's not like I don't know how people envision how professional running teams work, but they don't all live together in a dorm or something. Like, they all have houses and apartments. And so I thought I was just going to be on my own, except when I was taking part in team activities. But Matt Yano, one of the members of the team at the time, he lives in a nice spacious house, and it's something he liked doing. He had a couple spare bedrooms, and he liked to rent them out, usually to visiting elite, other pro athletes who wanted to come to Flagstaff for some high altitude training.
Yeah, I think you commented in the book at one stage that you thought you were the slowest person ever to sleep in the spare bed.
Yes, I think that's accurate. I don't know for sure, but I know some of the other people who did sleep on that bed before me, and they are much faster than I am.
Okay, so you set yourself up with the team. We get to meet the team. One of the things I should say about the writing of the book is that it feels immediate. I don't know whether you wrote it as you experienced it, or you just collected all the notes and you're just a phenomenal writer. But I felt, when I first read the book, I thought, oh, this was last year. This is last year's Chicago. And then I sort of, as I looked at my notes, etc., I realized it was several years ago. And I thought, it feels so immediate, the writing of it. It's very, you feel very present. I think you feel like you're getting to know the characters. You feel present on each day. You write it a little bit like a diary. Was that an intention, or did you write it like that? Did you write it a piece each day, or make notes every day?
Yeah. So, one of the advantages of having written 27 books is that you learn a thing or two about the process. And one of the lessons I've learned over the years is that you need to have a plan. It's actually like a training plan, really. You need to have a plan, but you shouldn't chain yourself to the plan. So, the biggest mistake I could have made early on in the process of turning this experience into a book would be just to decide on a format before I even landed in Flagstaff. So I had notions about, what I wanted to produce from it, but I wanted to be very open to the experience and let the experience tell me what form the book should take. But, I did plan to keep a journal, because, the memory is, mine especially, is not reliable. So I knew I couldn't just experience it, try to hold it all in my head, and then write it down later. So I did keep a daily journal while I was there. And I also did a blog because I wanted I wanted people to be able to follow my journey, sharing my journey in real time. So the website Final Surge, it's the website that the team uses to track their training, but they also have kind of a blog function. So it's like it's like a blown out training log. So I would share a little write-up about my day's experience through Final Surge, share it on social media so that people could follow as I went. And that kept me accountable. The journal entries were always much more wordy. The writing is atrocious, but that wasn't the point. The point was just to get the information down. And I remember it was like early validation while I was there. I remember Ben Bruce, a member of the team at the time, telling me, because some of the members of the team would read what I wrote, at least occasionally.
Check if they were going to be a hero in the story.
Right, exactly. Some of them were a little nervous, probably, but I remember Ben telling me at one point, not Ben Rosario, the coach, but Ben Bruce, a team member, it's like you have a tape recorder in your head while we're running together. But that's exactly what I was trying to do. I wanted to be very present, because I was living a dream, but I also wanted to be sort of remembering everything and then getting it down as soon as I was back at Matt Yano's house. And before I'd gotten very far, I realized, like this journal format kind of works. Like that wasn't the plan going in, to make the book have, be a journal or a diary. But I thought, runners kind of think this way. And there's just like a sort of natural, like narrative arc to, counting down. The chapter titles are a countdown to the Chicago Marathon. So I thought, this format could work.
Well, it absolutely does. From our perspective, we were just jumping out of our chairs, basically talking about it as we were reading it.
Because because it was like kind of the countdown to the race. It was also sort of like, as you got further in the book, some of those other characters came in, which were like your teammates that you it took a little longer to get to know. And then there was also, because you talk a lot about sort of feeling a bit under pressure to that it all end up producing a good result, which was, the time that you had in your head, and it kind of built up the excitement. And now it kind of explains why you're feeling so much pressure, because if you were doing all these journal entries online, then you had all these followers and you had all these people. I mean, other than your wife, who was invested in this project because she came along, but you had all these other people that were also kind of invested in your project. So how did that sort of feel, and why was it that you in the book you were saying how you don't want to put the number out there, the true number that you wanted to attain, you didn't want to tell anyone, including Ben?
Yeah, that whole pressure thing is interesting, because like any professional sport, professional running is a high pressure job. It's perform or find something else to do with your life. It's a what have you done for me lately type of deal. And I mean, they're under tremendous pressure. Tremendous. Think about it. It's like, these runners there in Flagstaff, they think about, say they started running when they were 12, 13, 14, 15. They won everything at that age, everything. And then they climb the ladder, they get to college, maybe they start losing a little bit there, but they're still mostly winning. And then suddenly, you know, they're out of college and they're competing against the Kenyans and dopers and
Yeah.
doping Kenyans.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. And you only have so much time, right? You know, the professional running is not for folks our age. Liz, I'm accepting you from that. You could be a professional.
Still have a chance.
But
well, I don't know.
But I wanted to experience that pressure, and that's part of the reason I did the blog and I shared in real time.
Okay.
I wanted it to be a high wire act for me. Like if I failed, I wanted to fail publicly. I really did, not because I wanted to fail publicly, but because I thought A, I wanted to experience the pressure, but B, I thought that pressure could help me succeed. Because, you know, if you have the strength to handle it, that's what pressure does.
So why didn't you give your goal out then? Why didn't you give?
Yeah, that's the other side of it. Because I literally thought it was impossible. Like I did not think it was possible.
Okay.
Like I did not trust the part of me that wanted it. You know, because I had always wanted it to, you know, what the it is, I had always wanted to join the sub 240 marathon club, and it just didn't happen. And I really tried hard, you know, from like age 28 to 46 when I arrived in Flagstaff. I tried and tried and tried, and I was long beyond. I got to 241. But that PR, that 241,
so close.
Yeah. But that PR was 9 years old when I hadn't gotten within 8 minutes of it. So I understand, like I'm knowledgeable of the sport and the science behind it. And so I didn't believe it was possible. There was a voice in my head that wanted it and wanted to believe it was possible, but I didn't. And that's why I was really reticent to speak it out loud.
It seemed in the story that there were actually two voices in your head. There was yourself, and there was actually a young lady called Sarah Crouch.
Yeah.
Who ran with you, who I think believed in you more than you believed in yourself.
She did, yes.
She wasn't part of the actual NAS Elite team, so where does she fit into the story?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Flagstaff is it's a running mecca, and it's crawling with elite runners, and they're not all members of NAZ Elite. And Sarah and her husband Michael, they were new arrivals. They made a permanent relocation to Flagstaff after I'd been there for a few weeks. Sarah and Michael came over to dinner at Matt Yano's house one night. Had dinner with them, and you know, you just vibe with certain people, you connect, and Sarah and I connected. She actually was a fan of mine.
Oh wow.
She was previously on a professional team. She was independent at that time, but she was on the ZAP endurance team in North Carolina, and I actually had a connection there. I'd visited that team a couple of times. So anyhow, we just connected, and for some reason, it's funny, these dynamics, because certain people took me under their wing, and they're almost young enough to be my children. It's just a weird dynamic, but it works because they're faster than I am. But yeah, Sarah was one of those people, and she's awesome, and she's a dreamer, and she's flinty. She's got an edge to her. She speaks her mind. And she just decided that I was going to be a bit of a project for her. But also, you know, she did, I mean, she genuinely believed in what I was doing, but we ran together. She was a 230, she had a 232 PR at the time. And we would run together, and yes, she was adjusting to being at 7,000 feet for the first time, but her feeling was, this guy's fitter than I am. Like, why does he only want to run 240 or whatever? So she kept pushing me to set my sights higher. And also we developed a little bit of like a half joking rivalry, complete with a lot of lame smack talk.
So how did you not end up living there after the 13 weeks, you know, after having watched her move there and having experienced all this, because you do say that at one point, yeah, you guys went to look at houses.
I mean, were you serious about moving? Or were you just taken up by the whole process?
It was both. And again, if I'd experienced this whole thing as a much younger person, I would have experienced it very differently. But I was old enough and self-aware enough to know what was going on. That it was very special to be there. But one thought I had was, well, it's special, but it's only meant to be this, and then you move on. Another part of me thought, well, why not? If you love it, you on almost every level, I love Flagstaff more than where I actually live. But I'm married, and my wife, we're a 50-50 partnership, and she's not a runner, and she has family here in California where we live. So it's a partnership, and that's really, I probably would live there. If this were an autocracy and I could just, what
Decide.
I say goes.
Yeah. So I can understand, because I know, like, we went to BC, which is on the West Coast in Canada. And there are a lot of mountains there. In Montreal, it's very flat. There's one mountain basically. And my boyfriend will say it's a hill. It's not really a mountain. So when we went to the Rockies, he, like, my boyfriend loves the mountains, and he would have moved there, I mean, if I had said yes, like, the next day. And I'm kind of like, yeah, but our family and our friends, they're in Montreal. And so I completely get it. It's like, if you had a different life, would you move there? Probably yesterday. But yeah, because you have all these other things. And that must have been tough, though.
Yeah, not so tough, because my wife and I, we've been together a long time. We've coming up on our 19th wedding anniversary, and we made a bunch of moves that were all about me and what I wanted.
Okay.
And so I owe her.
I see. Okay. So does she run as well, or
No,
like what did she do while she was there? Okay.
No, she does not run.
Okay.
Yeah. So she has asthma, and the altitude was kind of hard on her. And it was actually weirdly, our dog Queenie is a bit of a background character in the book as well. We brought her along, and she did not do well there at all. Like, it's so it was like 2 against 1, really.
That's fair. You can't have Christmas every day. That's what I say. It
But
spoils Christmas.
I go back every chance I can get. I mean, just because you don't live there doesn't mean you can't go there. That's really been the compromise. I mean, I've lost track of the number of times I've been back there in the 3 years since we left. Going back again in August, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
Yeah, so I get to I get my Flagstaff fix.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Do we need to put that on our bucket list, Liz?
Yeah, I
Go to
think
Flagstaff.
so. I think so.
Hang around the streets, wait for some runners to come by and jump
No,
in. See how long you can keep up.
But now that we read the book, we know that they have a Thursday night run at the bagel shop, so we just have to show up.
Thursday morning. Don't show up at night.
Oh, Thursday morning. Oh, I got that wrong.
Everyone else has read the book too. Just in terms of the training, Matt, give us your thoughts on the actual training the whole experience. What were the things that you found unusual or particularly remarkable about training with the pros and being in amongst the pros?
Yeah, the training, I mean, I just responded very well to, the Ben Rosario marathon training formula. I had run, I don't really count marathons, but if you count everything, I guess I had run about 40 marathons, at that time. Chicago would have been roughly my 41st. And so, I wasn't a beginner and I had some sense of how you do it, but I did things a little differently under Ben's guidance for sure. You know, like the big things were, we really did 2 long runs a week versus the traditional one. And more often than not, the long runs were fast. Like, I mean, they were not so much long runs as we tend to think of them, like slogging for 30K or whatever, but they were workouts that just happened to add up to 30K of running. And you were doing that twice a week, not once. And one of them would be definitely sort of more epic than the other. So that was one thing. And Ben also had us, and of course I'm picking his brain because he would tell me what to do and I would say, why? Explain.
Yeah.
So I got to understand his thinking. And so we did a ton of stuff that was like more in the kind of moderate intensity range versus high. He everyone's got their own terminology. He uses a term called steady state, which is about the fastest pace you can sustain for 2 hours. So that's sort of the slow end of what he would consider a moderate intensity. And
so
then
for 2 hours, that's about marathon pace for the pros.
Exactly. That's what he thinks, like elite male marathon pace is roughly steady state. But even if you're a 4-hour marathoner, your 2-hour max pace is your steady state pace.
Okay.
And then so the fast end of moderate intensity would be what he calls critical velocity, which is your 30-minute max, like the fastest pace you can sustain for 30 minutes, which is between 5K and 10K race pace for most runners. So that we spent a ton of time in that range, and we did faster stuff, but it was more, I think of it as like low intensity was the meat, that moderate intensity stuff was the sauce, and the fast stuff was the seasoning in his formula. And the overall volume was quite high. I couldn't handle the amount of running that the real pros could do, but I did a lot. For me, I peaked at, and forgive my Americanness, 91, 92 miles in a week, which was a lot for me. So that formula, I felt great all the time. I really did. I'm very injury prone, so I was constantly on the verge of getting injured, and I did suffer one major injury halfway through. What do we got there?
145 kilometers.
Thank you very much.
It's a lot of kilometers.
A lot.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was about as much as I had ever done when I was a much younger man. But all the easy runs were on trails, and that made a difference.
They were fun, probably.
Yeah. And I just felt good, except for the, being on the verge of falling apart, like in terms of like my energy, my ability. Like, I didn't have any bad workouts. I had a few of those easy runs that are just not easy at all, but those are going to happen. By and large, I just felt great. The training worked.
Yeah. So sorry,
Liz.
I was just going to comment on that one little note that you said at the end, was because we kind of noticed that it seemed like you always just wanted to go faster.
Yeah, we're saying exactly the same question.
Okay, yeah. So because Ben, it seemed like throughout the book, he was always saying like too fast, too fast, too fast. So you were always doing your workouts too fast. And then, so do you think that was because, was it because you were just feeling so good, or is it something about, that us not so elite runners tend to do, is just run everything either too fast or not at the right pace? Or
yeah, it obviously, it became a running joke that, Matt doesn't know how to pace, and yeah, I would do pretty much everything too fast. Well, not everything, because the easy runs, well, they were a thing unto itself. But I had to run alone in easy runs a lot of the time, just to avoid going too fast. But in workouts, yeah, like Ben would give me a time and I would just blow away the time. But the thing is, I'm super experienced and I'm a coach myself, and I consider myself good at pacing. When I race, I almost always negative split my races, almost always. Like I know how to do it, and then suddenly I come to Flagstaff and can't do it. I can't hit a pace to save my life. And I think part of it was I never trained at high altitude before, and you can't go as fast. So you have to make an adjustment, but I think I adapted extremely well to the altitude. I mean, thanks largely to how, Ben eased me into training at high altitude. And the other part of it was that Ben had never, or he wasn't used to coaching runners like me. I mean, which is to say, as slow as I am. And so I think the targets he gave me were pretty soft. And a lot of, in my defense, when I ran too fast in some of the, especially early on in some of the workouts, I wasn't defying, in my coaching, I tell athletes all the time, there's the spirit of the workout and there's the letter of the workout, and they're not the same thing. And so I felt I was always running in the spirit of the workout, but I was disobeying the letter of the workout. So I don't think I was ever running too hard. I was just running too fast. But over time, because Ben is a great coach, so he figured it out. He needed time to learn me as an athlete, and I needed time to, I don't know, get my act together in terms of like training at 7,000 feet. And as readers of the book will know, by the end of it, we met in the middle. We figured it out.
Yeah, in terms of the training itself, okay, we hear great description there. What about the things that were sort of outside of the running? There seemed to be a lot going on.
Yes, I mean that's the thing. I mean, being being a professional runner, it's 24 hours a day, really. I mean, you're still a human being. There were a few runners on the team were parents, so they had kids to take care of. Some of them had little side gigs, like they did a little coaching on the side or what have you. So
Kellen was a firefighter.
Yes, Kellen Taylor was training to be a firefighter. And so running wasn't everything, but still their running was their paycheck. So they, it's things we all do, like eat and sleep. Well, whether you're a runner, professional runner or amateur, or even not a runner, you got to eat and sleep. But I mean, their diet, they ate a certain way because they were professional runners, right? They couldn't just eat whatever, and sleep too. Most people don't get quite enough sleep. They can't get away with that. Almost everyone on the team naps. And just as a little tangent, I went to Flagstaff with the intention of completely immersing myself in the professional runner lifestyle. And that meant doing absolutely everything they do. But the last domino to fall was napping. Like I hate napping.
It's interesting. I got a list of questions here, and one of my questions is: talk to me about napping. I'm extremely interested in napping.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it. I did not. But eventually, I broke down. I got to the point, like very, very near the end of the process, where the training was so heavy that I just had to. Like the choice was taken away from. I resisted it to the very end, and then I basically just napped.
Yeah.
I just fell asleep in my chair. That was my nap. But yeah, there's so much ancillary stuff they do. Not just like there's the running, obviously. Then there's the strength workouts. And then there's like the ancillary, I call them corrective exercise routines. Like each member of the team, based on whatever injuries they had in the past, whatever physical therapist had said their imbalances were that they needed to balance out, they would all do some kind of routine separate from strength workouts of stretches, mobilizations, little strengthening things. And
Wow.
and so, that for me, because I was constantly on the verge of breaking down, AJ Gregg at Hypo 2 Sport there in Flagstaff, who was affiliated with the team, like he just kept giving me stuff to do. Like every time I went in, I'm like, well, now this hurts and now that hurts. And he's
So he
like,
would just add to your list of
yeah,
exercises?
I ended up like timing it at one point, and it was 35 minutes. So like, and there was one thing I had to do 5 times a day. So that was that was something else. So 35 minutes a day, I had to be like balancing on one foot with my eyes closed and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's just,
So
massage once a week, every week. And it's not like Swedish massage where it feels good. It's therapeutic massage where it doesn't feel good. And yeah,
I've had some of that. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So actually, like with all that, so because you know about sports nutrition, obviously you've written books on it, and you had mentioned in the book that during your sort of like stint doing, being a pro athlete, you ended up like losing weight you didn't even think you had to lose. So what was different? Did you learn something new about nutrition or about your personal nutrition that you didn't know before? Or
what I learned was that no matter how serious you think you are about performance, as an independent, competitive amateur runner, you are slacking off in certain ways. You are cutting corners in certain ways. And you either recognize that you're doing that or you don't. But either way, you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And, for me, I am an amateur, but because, I'm not the same as like someone who, works at a bank and has 3 kids. Well, that's not me. I write books about running. I coach runners. So I'm really immersed in the sport, and my life already revolved around it in much the same way a professional runner does. I'm just on my own normally. So I felt like I knew the stuff and I was doing the stuff. Like anything you can do to help your running performance, I sort of felt like I was already doing. But only when I got into that environment where people were really doing everything.
oh
So it was serendipitous that I lived with Matt Yano, who just, he has a role model diet for runners. And it's not that it's like monastic where he just never ate a sweet. Matt has a sweet tooth and he would indulge it, every now and again. But he ate super high quality food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacks in between. Just had high standards, and the stuff was delicious. He loves to cook, and he made great stuff, and it wasn't really hard to eat that well. You just had to maintain the standard. And with him, living under the same roof with him, seeing what he did, I thought, you know what? I could probably eat a little less cheese. I could probably cut down on dark chocolate. So that's all I really did. So there was no great awakening in terms of, man, I've had it all wrong with diet. I didn't learn anything about nutrition per se. I just learned that I was fooling myself about how great a gap there was between what I was actually doing and what was both possible and sustainable. So I just made a few small adjustments really to the way I ate, and they added up to 9 pounds of weight loss.
One thing that an average athlete doesn't use very much would be a sports psychologist. I was fascinated by your occasional sessions with Shannon Thompson.
Right.
What role did that have, and is that a compulsory part of being in the pro team, or is that as needed?
Yeah, the sports psychology is definitely non-mandatory. So Shannon is affiliated with the team. She's also affiliated with Northern Arizona University, the major university in Flagstaff. And so a lot of the members of NAZ Elite do use her services at one time or another. And I've just, I'm a huge believer in the importance of the mind as it relates to endurance. So that was a resource I was absolutely going to take advantage of and did. And yeah, Shannon's great. It's funny, like not only were all the athletes on the team far younger than I was, also everyone associated with the team in any kind of professional capacity was like Ben Rosario, the coach, 9 years younger than me. AJ Gregg, the physical therapist I went to all the time, was 14 years younger than me. Shannon, my sports psychologist, my shrink while I was there, a decade younger than me. So everywhere I went, I was just being advised and helped and mentored by younger people. And
you had what seemed to be a pretty serious groin injury in the middle of, made for a great story because created a precipice situation with respect to the upcoming marathon, but it looked like it was quite a serious groin injury. My reaction was, if that had happened to me, I would have probably been out of the marathon. But Matt's got a whole professional team around him who seem to be able to help you get through to be able to race. Is that a fair point?
It was absolutely difference making. I mentioned earlier that I am injury prone. I've had every common overuse injury that runners experience more than once. I mean, you name it, I've had it. And I remember I got a chance to sit down with Ben Rosario in Sacramento a few months before I went out there to Flagstaff. He came out because a couple of his athletes were competing in the California International Marathon. And we just met at a Starbucks to have a little bit of a powwow plan for my fake pro runner experience, as I called it. And I remember distinctly during that meeting impressing on him, in the 3 months I'm out there with you, I will get injured. Like, I'm not a pessimist. You need to know this. Like, I'm brittle. And it's going to happen, and prepare yourself. And sure enough, I mean, I had more than one minor injury, but the groin thing was, the thing is, like, the injuries that I've had mostly, and the injuries most runners experience, are overuse. They're slow onset. This one was acute. It was more like, a high sprain. Like you jump up to rebound a basketball and then land on the top of your foot, and you're like, oh God. This was like that. But I've had enough experience with pain and injury that the moment it happened, I thought, here we go again. Like this is over. It is over. Over.
Oh no.
I was sure of it. As sure as I was that I was not capable of running a sub 240 marathon at age 46, I was sure that this whole thing was over. But I made, a recovery that seemed miraculous at the time. And it wasn't because of me. It was because of the resources and support and expertise that I had available. So that was another really powerful lesson, because it's not, there's no magic to it. This is what it means to be a professional in the sport. And, if you love running and you want to see how good you can be, and you're not a professional, and you can't recreate that whole infrastructure on your own, but you can try, you can do the best you can. And that's kind of what I wanted to communicate to other runners. It's like, if you take a no stone unturned approach and you try to create, you build a team, a support team around you, it will make a difference. It's not quite the same as being a real pro, but it saved me in that circumstance.
How much better do you think you would have done if you didn't have the injury? Because it seemed like during the race you respected it a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely came back to haunt me during the race. And Chicago was also hot that year. And, Sarah Crouch, you mentioned her earlier, my quasi rival, who took me under her wing. She told me I was in 235 shape. That might have been a little aggressive. I think if I hadn't had the groin act up, if it had been cooler in Chicago, definitely low 237s, high 236s. And that's part of the reason, because I told people, they're like, what are you going to do next after I got my happy ending in Chicago? And I kept saying, well, I'm just going to take some time off, focus on other things. But part of the reason I abandoned that plan and went back on my word, and immediately, as soon as I got home to California, I started training for another marathon, was because I felt like, dang, I could have gone even faster.
Yeah.
So then now, with all your new knowledge, well, it's not new anymore because it was in 2017, but is there some of that that's kind of influenced your coaching, or even, your training that you do now that you're self-coached again?
Oh, big time. Everything from some of the X's and O's, some of the specific workouts I did, I now prescribe to, well, I still do myself, and I prescribe to other athletes. Also, that, excuse me, that no stone unturned mentality. That's one thing I thought I can take that. I can't take 7,000 feet of altitude home with me. I can't take Ben Rosario and my teammates home with me, but that approach I can. And one of the things I decided to do when I got back to California is my second Ironman. This came up at the coming full circle now. But I was still hungry, and I just needed an outlet for it. And I decided, what? I had done one Ironman when I was 31, and I decided my next goal is to beat the time I did in my first Ironman in a second Ironman at age 48. And one of the things I did in preparing for it was get help. So I hired a swim coach. I hooked up with a service that they analyze your training data, mostly your bike power output and stuff, to tell you about your physiology and where you have room for improvement. And so the hubris that I had when I was 31, thinking, I'm so good, I can just, I'm such an expert, I can just do it without help. That was all gone. And I did end up destroying my my first Ironman time.
Wow.
And it's not that I was physically better, it's just that I had learned, I was taking advantage of experience and the lessons, some of which I learned as a fake professional runner. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff that I've just carried forward with me, both as an athlete and as a coach.
So I kind of like that you mentioned that even as a coach, you decided to hire a coach, because I find that a lot of times, like I have friends at work that talk to me about running and they like to run. And then you talk to them about joining a group and they're like, oh no, I'm not going to join a group. Like I'm just gonna run on my own. Yeah. It's I guess you're sending the message that
at all layers,
really
and every layer in whatever level you're at, getting some external advice can push you on a bit.
Yes. I mean, think about it. The members of any of the elite that I train with, some of them are coaches. They know the sport. They don't need it. They don't have a coach because they don't know how to train. Coaches, that's not what they do. They keep you from making stupid decisions.
Sometimes.
They save you from yourself.
Well, it's good. It's not easy to be objective with yourself, for sure.
So at the Chicago Marathon the grand finale to some extent of the whole book occurs at, it seems that there were 48 elites in the whole run, and one of those elites, selected elites, was Matt Fitzgerald. So how the hell did you do that, first of all, and how much fun was it?
Yeah, I mean, so this whole thing, obviously I envisioned this experience as a dream. I mean, that was the point. I created a personal fantasy. It wouldn't be everyone's fantasy, but it was a personal fantasy. And then I just went out and did it. And the realization of that fantasy was even better than the fantasy itself, because when I went out there, I told Ben Rosario, I would like this whole thing to culminate. Obviously, it has to culminate in a big race, right? We've all seen a bunch of sports movies, and the last scene is the championship game or whatever. So I needed this thing to end with my championship game. And I told Ben, I would like to do a marathon that at least one member of the team is also doing. And he suggested that I do the Chicago Marathon. And I thought, okay, great, I'll sign up. I went to sign up. It was sold out.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because that's what happens. And I thought, well, I've got connections now, so maybe I can pull some strings. So there's an agent for the team who's also a little bit of an ancillary character in the book, Josh Cox.
Yeah.
He's actually quite well known. He does broadcasting. He was a professional runner himself. He was on The Bachelorette way back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I never saw that because I don't have cable, so.
Anyhow, that's neither here. He doesn't put it on his resume as he assured me.
Okay.
It's neither here nor there. But we put it, I just went out there and with the thought that we'll figure it out. But I was not entered in the Chicago Marathon when I arrived in Flagstaff 13 weeks before the race. And Josh went to work. He negotiates with all the major race directors, and he had a relationship with Kerry Pinkowski, the director of the Chicago Marathon. And so he talked Kerry into letting me into the race. But the way he's wired, he's always, like most sports agents, he tries to get as much as he possibly can for his clients. And even though I wasn't paying him a dime, he thought, why stop there? Like, maybe I could talk Kerry into allowing Matt to participate as an elite. And he succeeded. Long story short, it took a long time. It was pretty late in the game when he gave me the good word that I would be given. Now, just so people understand, as a male, the standard for earning an elite bib at the Chicago Marathon is having previously run a 2:13 marathon or better, or the equivalent at another distance. Like I was absolutely nowhere near that. Talk about underqualified. But the argument that Josh made to Kerry was, this will be good for you and for the sport, for an everyman to go through the whole experience and then share it with the broader running community. And to Kerry's credit, he bought it, and just
no pressure. You're just gonna
what a
have
fantastic
to carry the
experience.
torch. Yeah. So from the book, I mean, we kind of talked about it. I know like what we got out of it, basically the messaging that we got out of the book is, if you give yourself the chance, then you are probably capable of way more than you think you are. So I don't know, was that what you were hoping that people would get out of your book, or was there anything else that you were kind of hoping that people would come away with?
That message in particular was kind of a bonus. What I went in there trying to prove, or what I went into the experience trying to prove, was that your talent level, your gift, should not set the limit for how far you pursue the sport of running. Your passion should. And so many people think like, oh, I don't deserve to get massage therapy every week because I'm slow, or why bother stepping up my training because I'm not that good. And I hate that. I really do, because like, even though I'm a way better than average runner, still my passion is far exceeds my talent. And I've always just let my passion decide. Like, I'll go ahead and train like a pro, even though I'm much slower than they are. And I just feel that everyone should give themselves the same license. So that's one thing I wanted to prove. It's like, it's okay, run run the dream, whether you're a 2:30 marathoner or a 5-hour marathoner. It's okay. If you want to do it, do it. You don't need anyone's permission but your own. Another thing I wanted to prove was that the pros know what they're doing. If you read my sort of how-to books, about diet, psychology, training, the common thread in all of them is train like the pros, eat like the pros, think like the pros. We're all human. Yeah, you're not as fast and maybe you're not as experienced, but if you scale their, what they do best practices. And if you scale them down to your level, they will work for you as well. And I wanted to come away with some proof of concept where, yeah, I'm faster than most amateur runners, but I'm still, and you'll see it in the book, I'm getting my ass handed to me by the male and female members of this team alike. I am not elite. I am not the genetic lottery winner that they are. And even still, I benefited hugely from doing things the way they do. Those were the two things I went in there wanting to demonstrate. The bonus was what you mentioned, is that stuff you don't think is possible for you probably is. Like if there's a little seed inside you that just wants it, and there's this whole rational shell around that kernel saying, oh, no, it's not. Are you kidding me? Don't listen to that part. Listen to the tiny little seed telling you that maybe you can. And so what if you fall short? You never know. So if it matters enough to you to just go for it, go for it.
So do you think Matt's offered you enough to get you over the line for a 3-hour marathon, Liz?
I think so. Yeah, I think I just have to go for it.
I think so.
I need to shave off 5 minutes, so I guess it's not too bad, but it could be a lot of minutes. Depends how you look at it.
So much of it is the mind,
Probably just to be respectful to you, Matt, we should try to wind this up a little bit. Otherwise, you won't come on to talk to us when your next project comes out. And maybe that's a good segue. Tell us about your next project. For sure, you'll have one. When we start the Matt Fitzgerald Running Book Review podcast, what will be the next project?
Yes, thankfully, I haven't run out of ideas yet. And I've got another book coming out at the end of this year, actually. It's called The Comeback Quotient. It's kind of a sequel to How Bad You Want It, same publisher, as a matter of fact. And it's another deep dive into endurance psychology. And what I'm trying to do there is I'm exploring the question, is there a common thread among athletes who are able to make the very best of the very worst situations? Like, we all love a great comeback story. And as athletes, we all have to make our own comebacks at one time or another, in one way or another. And the people who are just masters of the comeback, is there something that they're all doing? And of course, the answer is yes. And the book explores that.
Well, being over 60 now and trying to run 20-year PRs, I'll probably need to read that book. So as soon as it comes out, we'll be straight on that. Sounds pretty attractive to us, certainly to me at my age.
Well, I'm always up for reading more running books, and I know that the sports psychology is I think it's underutilized in the not pro, group of runners. I think we don't really realize how important it is.
We're winging it for the most part,
Yeah, I remember my first introduction to sports psychology was in university. We had a master's student working with our cross-country team for like one season. And we would just sort of like half do what she was telling us to do. And you kind of didn't really see the point. But now, looking back, I mean, all those techniques are they're used by, Kara Goucher.
Right.
So it's pretty funny. That's well, she was teaching me something. I just wasn't as open-minded as I am now.
And really, we should take the opportunity to thank Pegasus Books for giving us access to your book, and also hooking us up for this conversation, Matt. It's greatly appreciated. So we can find Matt at mattfitzgerald.org, as we said earlier at the start, and Liz told you all about it. There we have it. Matt lived the dream of being a pro marathon runner for a few months, and the way he's told us the story, certainly Liz and I, we lived vicariously through his time there. And if you'd like to know more about it, and of course you would, go out and get yourself a copy of Running the Dream by Matt Fitzgerald. Is there somewhere specific that you'd like to direct people to get their copy, Matt?
Well, I'm encouraging people these days to support their local bookseller if you got one. A lot of them are really struggling these days, and even if it's not the single most economical way you could buy it, and I don't say this for my benefit, but if you're an ebook person, that I am largely, that's fine too. But yeah, wherever you normally buy books, you can probably get this one.
And we'll probably put an affiliate link. Liz, you're good at these things. We'll put a link in our notes.
For the Canadians, or Amazon.ca, because unfortunately our local bookstore doesn't really keep up to date in their running books. Not the new ones, at least. You'll find like the older ones, but not always the ones that just came out a month ago.
So we'll wind it up there. Thanks for your time, Matt. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you. Liz, do you want to give our contact details?
Yep. So we're on social media. So you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Running Book Reviews. Our Instagram is the same, Running Book Reviews, and Twitter, I think it's Running Reviews. So that's where you can find us if you want to leave us a comment or a review or a suggestion. We're open to all of those.
One suggestion, Matt's leaving us to do his next book when it comes out later this year. Thank you very much for your time, Matt, and this is Running Book Reviews. Until next time.